All right, so for this effect number 2 and 3, we went to about 3 seconds. We've loaded up Atmosphere 07, Adobe Stock 02, and we're going to combine them along with the title for these blend modes. Yes. Atmosphere and Adobe Stock 02. Oh, Adobe Stock. Let's see if it's in here. Adobe Stock 02. Ooh, which actually looks even better. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to load that one in instead. So instead of Atmosphere 02, I'm going to load in Adobe Stock 02 because Mossy correctly pointed out they just had very similar names. And I missed that. So I'm going to go and drag this back, zoom in, and get this to be the same length. So at this point, I've got my Adobe Atmosphere at the bottom. I've got my Adobe Stock in the middle, and I've got this Future Cyber effect or any other title effect. Now I'm going to hit the little eyeball to hide everything except for the bottom layer. So we've just got our atmosphere. So throw me the thumbs up when you've got just that one showing up for right now. So Atmosphere 07 is our bottom effect. Now I'm going to Command Tab over here the QuickTime Player so we can watch the official. Okay, and what is happening? What is that background doing? Zooming in. So I'm going to come over here to my clip, select it, and open up what window to adjust the effects? Effect controls. I'm going to select this bottom clip. And if I don't have my keyframe animation turned on, it's just going to stay sitting here like this. So I want to go to the very beginning of it, turn on my position and scale. And then let's go look and see about how long it takes to zoom in. It zooms in pretty fast, pretty close. So I'm going to start maybe by zooming in. How close is it at the very beginning when it first comes in? It's already a little zoomed in right here. So I'm going to maybe grab the scale and start with it a little bit closer. That looks about right. And that's my keyframe. And it grows pretty quickly. So I'm going to come a little bit later and scale that up. So another keyframe is added, and let's see how that looks. Nice. Beautiful. So everybody go and add a little animation, a little zoom into that. And then let's come and look at how we can blend this together. Now, I'm going to go look and see if there's any smoke effects. I don't think we do. That's why I had to use this one. Throw me a thumbs up once you've animated that background to zoom in similar to, again, we're not trying to make this frame accurate or identical. We're just trying to achieve the same similar sort of effect. Throw me the thumbs up once you're there. Next up, I'm going to come over and turn the eyeball back on this Adobe Stock 02. Because while I don't have any smoky effects like we see right here, I did have kind of this visually interesting kind of atmospheric sort of thing in Adobe Stock 02. Now, what we see is, of course, once it's over the top of our background clip, it just completely blocks the whole thing, as is common for any time we have a clip on a higher track. But what we can do, of course, if we select this Adobe Stock 02, we could adjust its opacity either with this opacity line, or we can adjust the opacity here in the effect controls. You notice if we bring that opacity down, it certainly starts letting some of the background, or it lets you see through this Adobe Stock 02 clip to the background, which does create something similar to what we see in the official music video. But you can tell certain parts of it are brighter, certain parts are darker. So we're actually going to start with this opacity all the way back up at 100. And below that, we have instead blend modes. So click on the blend modes and let's look at the options here. So underneath blend modes, you'll see you've got normal and dissolve, and you can try those, and oftentimes you're not going to see much difference. But then you see categories. You see the darkening blend modes. You see some lightening blend modes, and they're all kind of separated out with these lines. And typically you can get a pretty good feel for what those blend modes are going to do by choosing the first one in the list. So if I choose darken, we're going to see that the image gets darker because it's adding together the darker pixels, which then makes the resulting image darker. So Adobe Stock 2 gets added, dark pixels added. And so you can see through the light pixels, but the dark pixels have compounded. So of course it got darker. Well, I don't want that. So I'm going to select Adobe O2. Let's see what happens if you choose Lighten instead. Ah, now it gets lighter because the light pixels between this clip and the bottom clip got added together. And that created a little bit more interesting of a visual. If you choose something like Overlay, you can try some of these options and you'll see it does different combinations of combining the two clips or blending the two clips. That's what blend modes do. And then you'll have a few others at the bottom that you can get some very wild effects. The difference between one pixel and another. So that produces really unusual effects when different colors are combined. You can divide or subtract the colors. Individual blend modes have a lot of possibilities that they can create. For our purposes, though, I'm going to stick with Lighten, which is going to combine the lightest parts. And then I'm just going to adjust with my opacity a little bit here, just so it adds a little atmosphere to the background, but without necessarily overwhelming it. There you go. So you see, it's not quite the same as the smoke effect that they have, but using blend modes, we can create a more interesting visual, dynamic visual with a lot of elements. Next up, let's go add a title and see what we need to do there. If I look at this one, we can see a title coming together, but its colors are being inherited from the video around it. So in my case, what I did was by loading this one in, I'm going to turn it back on. And when I loaded up this particular free motion graphic, number one, it's so intensive, so CPU intensive, we get this red line over the top. Does everybody see that? So that makes it look not quite as realistic. Obviously, I'm going to delete this and just go load up the original one again, or I'll choose one that's totally different. Again, you don't have to use the exact same title. I'm just going to go pull one in because what we want to do is we want to connect it visually to what's happening in the rest of the video. Let's see if this one will load up okay here. It may not. Everybody go find a nice big title. This is sure putting up a fight. Let me just go back to my templates and I'll just grab this one and drag it in again. And then I'm just going to trim it until it's the same length. And select it. Throw me a thumbs up once you've got a title over the top of your other two background clips. All right, so now that we've got it on here, we notice, big difference, when we put the title over the top, it completely blocked out the background, of course. But over here in our Essential Graphics panel, if I go to Edit with the Cyberpunk title selected, I can look for things like background and find background opacity. So if I go and I lower this background opacity, that's going to let the background go away, or the background show through, and let my title hover over the top. I'm then going to come in here to my text controls, open up my main text and replace these words with Believer in all caps, just like the music video. And then I'm probably going to go to my subtext where I see this extra line that I don't need and just delete that. And that's getting me a lot closer. Now, the one problem I see is that it's got some colors in here, reds and stuff that are not related to the image. So everybody go get your title in. And what I want to do is I want to change these text colors. So I'm going to toggle this open. And just like any color adjustments in here, you can simply click on the little eyedropper and choose your colors. So what I'm going to do, I've got a little window in my way here, so I'm going to have to shrink this over just a bit. This red color is definitely not in my image. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper and come choose from this orange. And some of these blue colors are similar, but not identical. So I'll click on this and maybe choose from this particular blue. Click on this one and choose from this other blue. And maybe even grab this one and choose from a different orange. And now we've got a title that's connected to and visually influenced by the environment around it. Now, what you will notice is once you have that done, if you chose a really beefy title like this, it will not be able to play back in real time. So how do we fix that? Does everybody have a red line over their title? That's telling you it's not going to play back in real time. So you can simply select the title, go to the sequence menu, and choose Render Selection. Your computer will take just a second, and it will go ahead and essentially replace this with a little rendered file, and it'll change it to green so you can now actually watch it play back in real time. Beautiful. Looks super cool. Looks similar and related to what we saw in the official video, and it's now actually connected visually to what's happening. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at this next one. In the other instructional video, I think I went through the effect 1, color replace, and I went through using the echo effect. Is that correct? Good, okay. So now we just did 2 and 3, and actually number 5 is very similar. Now I did notice a mistake I made in here, but let's go look at this about 36 seconds in. So I'm gonna fast forward to about 36 seconds, and let's take a look at it. All right, so here at about 36 or so seconds, we see this come up with 3 different visuals. Okay, so right at that woo-woo at about 36 seconds. So let's go find it. I'm gonna zoom over here to about 36 seconds. And right there at woo-woo, we need these 3 shots. Let's go see what they give us. It says we need Dolph fighting 15, Dolph fighting 10, and Atmosphere 05. Dolph fighting 15, Dolph fighting 10, and Atmosphere 05. Now, notice, hopefully I will have this fixed by next semester. But what I did is I gave you guys a folder with all the shots for the effect shot footage. Does everybody see that? Except I was wrong. So in here you see I put in Dan fighting 15 and Dan fighting 10 instead of Dolph. So if you want to just find the correct ones, I'll have them corrected for future semesters. But I'm going to look for Dolph. And there's my Dolph fighting 15, which I can see is this background shot of his head. So I'm going to go ahead and load this up. Let's figure out how long we want this one to last. The master of my CEO. Set my out point. And I'm going to go put that on layer 2. There's Dolph fighting. And then I'm going to set my in and my out points around that now. Dolph fighting 15. Dolph fighting 10. Here is this shot of him laid out. And we can see it starts with him just kind of laying there. And it actually just stays with him laying there. So I'm going to go and move my source patch. And drop Dolph fighting in there. And what was the other one? Atmosphere 05. Then do a search, Atmosphere 05. And this looks like that same kind of like bright energy line. So I'm going to set my in and my out points around it. Move my source patch up to a higher level. Put that on. So now I've got all 3 clips stacked on top of one another. Everybody go ahead and stack up your 3 clips. Dolph fighting 15 on the bottom, Dolph fighting 10, and then Atmosphere. Raise a hand or give me a thumbs up when you have that ready. All right. Now let's look at the sample and let's see what we need it to do. Now we don't have to do the in and the out, but to get this particular effect, we need him as a background. We need this clip on top above him so that this is showing through. Which pixels are showing through, the light ones or the dark ones? Yeah, the light ones of this. And then we've got our kind of energy bar atmosphere over the top. So I'm going to come over here to Premiere. We can just hide that energy thing for a second. And if we compare this shot, he kind of zooms up. So I'm going to go to the very beginning here. Choose him, set that scale, and then have it zoom up very quickly and scale all the way up until he is big and on the screen. And then I need his blend mode. Let's try that lighten again and see how it blends him over the background. Pretty good, actually. Oh, I just scaled it up until it looks about like this over his face. Again, you don't have to do it exact, but I just dragged the scale up here until it was over the face about the same amount of time. Welcome. And once you've done that, do the same thing with this atmosphere. It just looks like it's kind of hovering over the top. And we could try blend modes. I'll try some of these like darken and lighten. But I find that even with lighten on the atmosphere, I still probably want to pull this opacity down a bit so I can see that energy going over him. Nice. And it looks pretty similar. So I just ended up pulling the opacity down and using a lighten blend mode on that atmosphere clip to give me something similar to what we're seeing there. That is effect number 5. All right, let's take a look at effect number 6. Around 41 seconds, we've got a stutter edit and some scaling. So we're going to use Dolph fighting 11 around 41 seconds. Let's go look at it in here.
I was broken from a young age, taking my soak into the masses.
There we go. So about 40 seconds, we see it comes in. We also see this stutter edit where the time elapses faster because there's a little cut. So we see that bum as it jumps forward. And if we move through that one frame at a time, we can see every time he is sitting up, every time it does a little jump, it zooms in. So we need to do this. I'm going to pop over to here. Let's load up the clip that we need. So in my visuals, it says we need Dolph fighting 011. So I'm going to come in here and look for Dolph fighting 011. There's the shot. I'm going to go figure out where I need it to start and delete these extra markers that I've made real quick. And let's figure out where we want it to start. So I'm going to watch the original reference. It is. So broken from a young age. So I'm going to go find where they say young age. There it is. So right here at about 39 seconds or so in my edit, I'm going to go put in Dolph fighting 11. Into my project. And go ahead and do that. I'm going to delete these other markers because I've already made them and I want to show you how to do it. So everybody, throw me a thumbs up once you've got Dolph fighting 11. Here starting at around 39-40 seconds. All right. So if we look at this, there's a couple things that I do when I'm trying to match something in another video. One, I look for visually what's happening, and two, when in the song does that happen? Because if I can match things up, it makes it much easier to duplicate the effect. So here we can see I was young age is right when it comes in, but if we hit play, we see he's moving pretty quick. If we look at the original clip, let me reset my window here. If we look at the original clip, all right, we can see that he's much slower here. So much slower. So what we want to do is we want to figure out, okay, well, from this point in the song where this clip comes in, where does kind of the next important thing happen? So I'm going to rewind this and let's watch. So right as that next shot ends, he's all fully set up. Masses. So right after masses, he's fully set up. So let's figure out where that is. So right there, we've kind of got this masses, but he's not even half set up here. So I need to figure out where he's fully set up. So if you keep scrolling, you'll find that somewhere over here, you can find him actually finally set up. So I'm going to select the clip and hit the M key so it puts a marker there. So I know I've got to fit from here all the way back to here between these 2 points. So everybody go ahead and go do that. And I'm going to use my cut tool and go ahead and cut this right there so it's its own little piece. So everybody go cut it so that we can treat that clip like its own thing, where he's fully set up. All right. Now, if we know that this piece needs from there to there, needs to fit between these, what's the quickest tool that will let us squash this down to play back in that space? You've learned about it before. What would it be? We need to speed this clip up so that the whole thing lands between these two markers. Rate stretch tool. So I'm going to come over to all my tools, look under the ripple edit tool, click and hold down, and find the rate stretch tool. And then when I hover and I click and I drag, I'm now squeezing that, speeding it up, and that's going to get up to about 208%. And now he's sitting up in the right amount of time. All right, so go ahead and use your rate stretch tool to squeeze that part so it actually happens at the right speed and the right amount of time. If you compare it to here, be in good shape. Now, what else happens here? Let's look at it. We sped up his sit-up. What else happens? It zooms in. So as he's sitting up, we see those zooms, and they all happen on those tom hits. Bum, 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 bum. So what we need to do is go add our tom hit markers in here. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to make sure nothing is selected. So I'm deselecting his clip, although we could do it on his clip, but I'm going to deselect his clip. Start a little early to give myself a little run in, and here's what we do. Hit play, and
I was broken from a young age, taking my soul.
And I just hit MMMM right when those, along with the bum. So MMMM, and that adds in these markers. Now pause before you go doing anything. So I'm just putting the markers in. And what happens here when every one of those toms hit? Everybody eyes up here. It just zooms in a little bit more. So I'm going to use my cut tool, cut at every one of those clips, and then select each clip, and maybe the first one I leave alone. The second little clip, with it selected, I could scale it to like 105. It'll zoom in a little bit more. The third one, maybe I'll do 110. The fourth one, I'll select it and do like 115. And the last one, I'll do like 120. And now let's see what happens. Bum. Zooms in, yes. If the clip is selected, or if a clip is selected when it's playing back, the marker gets put in the clip. If you click to where there's no clips selected, the marker adds to the timeline. Yep. Sweet. All right, so everybody go through and add your little scales in so that everything gets zoomed in as those stutters happen. All right, so we've just done our little stutter edit with some scaling with that Dolph fighting clip. And now we're getting a little bit closer over to effect number 7. So number 7, let me look at this. And if we look at our original. Okay, so there's cuts to a different shot there. But I'm just not using this piece, so I'm going to delete it. So let's pop over and find the next one, number 7. About 46 seconds in, we need boxing 037 for the next 2 effects. So boxing 037, I'm going to come look for boxing. Make sure I've got my project in here. I'm not finding it. What's weird? Boxing, Dandolf Boxing 037. There it is. And so here's my boxing 37. And let's go find the shot itself. Poems for the few that look at me, took to me, shook at me, feeling me, singing from heart. So heartache to the pain. So here we see. Please skim it up. Taking my message from the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing. All right, so we can see a whole bunch of different effects here. I'm going to bring this volume down just a little bit. So he first stands up. So let's go start it in the right place. I'm going to look for heartache to the pain. So I'm going to go right about there. So I'm going to go load up boxing 37. I'm going to set my in and my out points and drop it in. And maybe put it down here on lower track. From the pain, taking my message from the veins. And so he's sitting, and we can see that this clip was originally very slow motion. My lesson from the brain, seeing the beauty. So now we're going to use the official video as a guide so that we can get this done in the correct way. Yes, Nate. If you don't have the track source patch made, sometimes it gets turned off and then it doesn't know where to go. Yep, that's what it was. All right, so here we go. Same thing. In the original music video, let's watch what happens and listen to when it happens. So I'm gonna hit play. From heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the vein. Okay, so we have heartache from the pains when it starts. From heartache, from the pain, taking my message. So taking my message from the vein. So from the vein. So basically it needs to get to him standing up fully where the word bane happens. So heartache from the pain, taking my message from the veins. Okay, so from the veins, speaking my lesson. But we can see that his stand-up takes a lot longer. So I'm going to come in here, figure out where he is stood up, use my cut tool, and just cut it right there, because this whole thing needs to fit into. From heartache, from the pain, taking my message. Undo. From heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins, speaking. So I just dropped a marker right there, and how do we squeeze this down to fit? Use our rate stretch tool. We go to rate stretch and squish this whole thing down, and let's see if he now does it at the right speed. From heartache, from the pain, taking my message from the veins. There we go. From heartache, from the pain. And now I need to do the same thing with my scale and stutter. So deselect everything and from heartache, from the pain, taking 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to go through and do the exact same thing. I put my markers on the little tom hits, cut it at every place, and let's go and scale them up. So I'm going to scale that up to 105. The next clip up to 110. The next clip to 115. And the next clip to 120. Let's see if that looks right. Heartache from the pain, taking my message from the veins. Okay, what's that? Nope, you just need to watch the official music video and watch what's happening. So what's happening when it starts? This. And what's the next time there's an edit that happens? What's he doing? So basically, we need to get to him standing fully up, and that's what we did. So we just found where he was finally standing up, and we just rate stretched it back until it was landed right on that bane. And then we just chopped up on the tom hits and scaled them up. By the way, I am screen recording all this to create a new tutorial to make life easier for you. All right, so now we've got our little stutter edit. And then in this one, we need him to start turning. So right as we see him starting to turn, we need to figure out how much of this needs to happen. So let's go look at the official music video. See where his face comes in there. Bane. And then what's the next thing that happens? Speaking my lesson from the brain. Lesson from the brain. And brain happens right as his gloves come together. So I need to go mark where that should be. So here we go. Speaking my lesson. I'm going to deselect everything. Speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the Lesson from the brain. So I just put that marker right there where I think that happens.
My lesson from the brain.
Okay. And now what needs to be happening right at brain? His fist needs to be bumping together. So I'm going to go figure out where that happens. You can tell this is a really super slow-mo clip, so it's a long ways over here. In fact, you can see I've already put a little marker right here when his fists come together. So right before his fists come together, I've got my little marker. I'm going to cut it, switch to my rate stretch tool, and squash that whole clip all the way back to fit in there.
From the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain.
And then move the rest back to fit.
From the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain.
Okay. Now in this case, he really needs that dip to white dissolve. So I'm going to go open up my effects and look for a dissolve. And here's a dip to white dissolve. I'm going to put right between the two. So it looks like it does in the official music video.
From the veins, speaking my lesson.
It's maybe a little short or a little long.
From the veins, speaking my lesson.
And I probably would start this one at the same zoom level, since this one we zoomed up to 120. I would probably start this next one at 120 as well.
Veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing.
And if we're going to have that at 120, we got to make the next one at 120.
From the veins, speaking my lesson from the brain, seeing the
Cool.
beauty.
Everybody go through and edit and time compress that
Lesson from the
right until his gloves come together. Okay, so that finishes up number 7. So we've got that speed adjustment on his this Boxing 037. And the last one is this effect that happens around 51 seconds with glowing gloves and masks. So you see right as his gloves come together, they both get really bright. They're kind of this fuzzy glowing glove thing. And then as his gloves move down, we see them continue to glow. Now, this, in order to do this, requires what we call rotoscoping. And let's see where it ends.
From the brain, seeing the beauty.
So right at beauty is when it cuts to another line. So I'm going to go back to mine and do the same thing.
Seeing the beauty.
So
The brain, seeing the beauty.
So right at beauty, I'm going to go trim this back.
From the brain, seeing the beauty.
There we go. And we still have more B-roll to add. But right here, I've got it trimmed back. And now we need to make it to where when those gloves come together, they suddenly glow bright. So here's how I'm going to approach this. We need to go to our effects window. Shift-7 will open up your effects window. And then I'm going to do a search in this search box and search for bright. And you will see one color correction effect pop up, brightness and contrast. And I'm simply going to drag and drop it onto the clip, onto this Boxing 37 where his gloves have come together. So I dragged brightness and contrast up, and then open up your effect controls with that clip selected so you can see the brightness and contrast settings right here. Throw me a thumbs up when you've got that loaded. Once it's on there, grab that brightness setting and let's crank it up, maybe 100%. And let's grab the contrast and bring it up to like 50, 60%, till kind of everything is glowing, but especially the gloves. It looks like about 71% seems pretty good. So now his gloves are glowing, but what else is? Everything. Yeah, everything else, because it's now covering the whole clip. This brightness and contrast effect is pumping up the brightness and contrast of the whole clip. Throw me a thumbs up if that's what you're seeing. All right, now, hands off your keyboards for a second, because you need to see this next procedure to kind of get the feel for it. It does take a little practice to get used to, but we use it all the time. And that is the act of masking our effect. Now, where you click really matters on this, so just try to watch this. I'm going to try to give myself as big of a window as I can here. I'm just going to resize this a little ways so that I can click as easily as possible. And you can also, if you wanted to, you can come down and you can change this fit to something like 150 and then use your scroll wheels or scroll sliders to kind of scroll around. I think I'll be able to do it here at like 100%. I'm going to zoom it here to where I can kind of see this whole glove. Conceivably, I could even shrink it down smaller. Maybe I'd bring it down to like 75. That'll be a little easier. All right, now watch me do it. Just watch the process. Don't try to follow because it's so easy to get messed up that if you haven't seen the process, but it's not hard. Here's what we're going to do. Underneath the effect, you see a couple of different masking options. If you remember Photoshop's from Survey, if I click this circular mask, you see it puts a circular mask in here that we could move around. And that means that's the only thing showing through on that particular effect. So we've only got this showing through the brightness. Now we've got a few things here. We've got a mask feather. If we drag that up, that makes a more feathered sort of look around his glove. But you can see it's brightening up his chest and arms too. Opacity will adjust how clearly it's letting it through. We've got our mask expansion, where you can expand it bigger than what you've actually drawn. So, but this circle, and of course, if I don't like it, I can simply click on the mask and delete it, and I'm back to square one. But what I need to do is not make a circular or a square. I'm going to use this free draw Bezier tool. I'm going to click on it, and this is very important. Watch. It makes this mask here, and I'm going to come through and try to use as few points as possible to draw around one glove. So I'm going to click right here where I think I see his glove. Maybe click right here because in a straight line. I'm going to click up here, and that doesn't do a great job because it really is kind of like, I could always undo and just go back and like try to hit it at just the main points. It is going to be a little blocky. And when you come back and you connect it to the original link, you're going to notice that that puts this all around. And now it's masked everything except for the glove. Now, if you want this to look a little cleaner, you can hover over each of these points and hold your Option key down, and you'll get a little funky arrow. And when you click on it now, that will give you little handles so you could round it out. So if I Option click on some of these, it'll make them a little more round. And as you adjust this, adjust these little handles, it'll give you a little bit more rounded effect. Now, I'm not going to try to overly make this perfect because I'm going to grab this feather and make it glow just a little bit and feather out. But now, how do we keep that? Well, I want you to go through right now and try to just create a mask. And once you've done it with just straight lines, you've created a mask around this glove, hold down your Option key and go around and smooth some of the ones that need to go around edges. You can always, if it's going too far, you can click on one and then grab the little handles that pop up, and you can kind of just adjust them, drag them to be able to make it more closely follow the contours. So everybody go make a mask around your glove. Just use the first glove. Don't forget, you do have to click on the word mask for this path to show up. If you deselect, you won't be able to affect it. So you have to actually click on mask to get your points. Everybody go do that. All right. So now here is how we do this. Take note of a couple of the controls. I'm starting here on the very first frame. I need to go to the mask path and turn on its animation stopwatch. When I turn that on, it will create the first keyframe and lock in that spot for the mask. Then I have to click on the word mask again to get my little handles back. So when I click on the word mask, the handles are going to come up. Then I'm going to come to this little arrow for track selected mask forward 1 frame or backward 1 frame. Now, you could try these other two, track selected mask forward, but watch what happens. Just watch. Don't do this, but watch what happens when you do. If I just click this, Premiere is going to play forward through the clip, and it's going to try to adjust this mask. Well, it won't try to adjust it. It'll just try to move it to follow that glove. The problem is, a glove changes shape depending on whether it's pointing at the screen or sideways or up or down, so it's not going to be able to do it. But watch what it does. It tries to track it, and it created keyframes everywhere along the way. So you can see when it moved up, it tried to move it, but it doesn't have the ability to reshape the mask. So when it went a little farther, it just moved it. So it's trying to track that glove, but it even tried to expand it. But then as the glove changed shape, it kind of lost track. And so for irregular shapes, it doesn't do a great job. If we did it with something like a ball or something that stayed the same shape, it would probably do a pretty good job keeping track of that ball as it moved around. So what we have to do is manually do this. So I'm going to come in one frame at a time. I'm going to click forward one frame. Going to come and I'm going to kind of reposition this. If you hover outside of it, you'll get a little turning handle. If you hover outside of one of these lines, you'll get the turning handle. So you can kind of rotate it. So you don't have to completely reinvent the wheel every time. But sometimes just to make it work, you're going to have to go and hover over the little clip edges or the little keyframes that you've made and drag them out, essentially resizing them to work for this frame. And then advance one more frame. One more frame. Put these guys in place. You can always adjust their handles. And go do it the next frame. So you notice this takes a while. And actually, it should go a little better for you. It seems like it is tracking because I used the auto tracking. Just going to go ahead and line these up. And one frame at a time. Realign this. And try to keep them on similar paths every time. It takes a while to do this for sure. But that's okay. We're learning good things. So I want you to go through and animate this mask. And we just keep nudging and rearranging. And I'm going to resize these and just keep moving my way down. Sometimes you'll notice it actually does a pretty good job. And I'm just going to keep moving my edit points around till it's looking good. Until it rolls off the bottom of the screen. And we can no longer see his hands. Okay, so everybody go through and be making your mask. And once you've got one glove done, you click the mask button and you do it again for the other glove. And I'm going to go ahead and set this back to fit. And let's see what happens.
The brain seeing the beauty.
So that first glove, and I could go through and make the feather maybe a little bit better and clean up those edges. But it's ready for me to select this boxing clip, come back to brightness and contrast, click on the mask button again, and repeat this process for the other glove. And there it is. When we start tracking forward, turn on the mask path animation, and one at a time, go through and fix it all up. All right, you can option click if I need to make these a little rounder. Oops. And you can always add more keyframes like this right here if you want it to be a little bit smoother. So we're going to go through and rotoscope these gloves and add a mask that moves with the gloves. All right, so go ahead and work your way through that. Plenty of cleanup needed done here. And then I'm going to come over and come around and help anyone that needs help. All right, so that is our last effect there.